voices whisper the cry farther down the line. There's a reason why. You tried before, but you can't buy. Everybody's thinking about me, but I feel alright. Everybody's out to get me, but I feel alright.
Oninaki continues Tokyo RPG Factory's streak of pretty good games. Pretty good JRPG experiences. They're not mind-blowing. You know, they've done I Am Setsuna, they've done Lost Sphere. None of it's masterpiece level, awe-inspiring, rewriting the genre work. But it's all decent. It's all rock solid. And that seems to be where they're at. They have this sort of old-school inspiration to their work. And they don't really set their sights on reinventing the wheel too much. But that's fine. And Oninaki is more of a departure from what they've done in the past, and probably their best work. It's got a lot of depth to its system. It's got an interesting combat system with flaws. This game's got plenty of flaws. But overall, I found myself having a lot of fun with it. In fact, I portioned off quite a bit of yesterday to play it, and spent almost all day going through it, and the day breezed by, so it must be doing something right. So let's talk about what it is first and foremost. It's depressing. The story is so dismal, and I don't mean that in terms of bad, I just mean it's po-faced. It's essentially a game about death. You play a character whose job it is to guide lost souls on their way, to keep a watch on the world of the dead, and it's set in a society that is pretty much obsessed with death, and the idea that you might to reincarnate when you die. So you've got to, you know, worry about that constantly. I can't think of a good way to describe just how depressing this game is. The whole society seems to be run by a death cult. And at first, for the first few hours, that's not even called out. It's just taken as read that this is all normal and fine, even when the main character is doing some assisted suicides for really dubious reasons. Mostly just, not like euthanasia, just, do you want to die? Alright, let's sort that out for you. As the game goes on, that subtly gets called out. But for a while, like, this game was just giving me the creeps with the offhand way in which it tackled the idea of death and people's obsessions with it. But as it goes on, that gets more interesting as the story gets more intriguing, and the powers in charge of this death cult society get called out more. But the main character is of that, you know, angsty, broody type, which I'm sort of over. But anyway, the story isn't what kept me going. It was the game's interesting idea of equipping sentient characters as weapons. You unlock demons, that's what they're called throughout the game, demons, and you can equip up to 4 of them at a time as a party and switch between them on the fly. And each one represents a different weapon with their own unique skill tree and unlockable abilities on that skill tree, and a whole bunch of passive upgrades as well. You can switch between characters that have guns, and we're doing here, you've got a pistol and a crossbow. You can have a character that's got a sword, spear, axe, you know, all the general weapons, and some interesting ones as well. I recently unlocked a demon that fought with 2 chain flails. Some of them can be quite a dramatic departure from regular weapons, though. There is a demon that's a big wolf, and you actually ride around on the back of the wolf while it attacks. So there's a lot of variety there. They've had fun coming up with different play styles, and it does really affect the style of play. Each demon feels quite different from the last. And that's a mixed bag. Sometimes that's great if you find a character that can, for example, dodge, because equipping demons also governs your ability to avoid damage. Some demons let you jump, some let you dodge, some let you shield, and by far, having a demon that allows you to actually dodge attacks is superior to everything else. Not that other demons don't have their uses, but the dodging ones are so good at avoiding attacks compared to everything else that I question why dodging isn't something all of them can do. Or, better, why the main character, why the actual protagonist you control can't just dodge as standard. Essentially, not all demons are created equal. Some of them are inherently more useful, inherently better than others. And some of that will absolutely come down to personal preference as well. There are some demons whose attacks have the player planted in place and just attacking around them rather than moving forward with attacks. And I've not really enjoyed using any of those, especially because enemies will just turn around and casually move out of range. But then there's the gun one, which is my favourite one, because of one ability you can unlock where you stand back to back with the demon and you just fire shots in all directions and just throw every enemy into a bloody meat grinder. Brilliant stuff. So again, really not created equal. There's a real imbalance between the demons, but that's fine. It's a single player game. You mix and match, you experiment, you find the ones you like, and in general just stick to any of them that feel overpowered. I'm playing the Switch version of this, by the way. I'm just going to mention it here because I saw it happen in the footage while I talked, right? Do not map things to the left stick on Switch, because if you use the Pro Controller, you will always be pushing that thing in. A map expansion has been mapped to the left stick. That's why the map just got big there, because I push it in with my big fat trotter when I'm getting into the game, and therefore pressing harder on things when I'm moving around. Anyway, that was just a little gripe I've got to get out of the way. Let's talk about combat, how the combat actually feels to play. It's interesting, and it's certainly not going to be to everybody's taste. It is slow, bordering on ponderous. In fact, I'm going to revise that. It's not bordering on ponderous, it is ponderous. It's been deliberately designed that way. It feels almost as if they've made it as strangely stuttered as it is, so that it specifically doesn't feel like an action game. Because if this was sped up, if the combat was sped up and delays between moves and attacks were not there, it would feel so much more like a hack and slash game. And I feel like it would benefit from feeling more like a hack and slash game, but it doesn't. Attacks take time to charge up. There is always a delay after you've made attacks. There's just these little tiny delays added into everything. And the enemies likewise take time to attack and will sometimes just stand there before making their moves. And that all seems to have been contrived in a way to make this feel more like more JRPG-ish, I guess, and to have a little bit of a tactical bent to it, so that you've got to make sure there's good distance between you and enemies, make sure you attack after they've attacked in certain cases, to give you time to pull off moves. So if you get into that flow of approaching this with more of a tactical view, if you take your time, if you get into the rhythm of the action, you'll find yourself getting on with it. But I did spend most of my time enjoying it, don't get me wrong. I spent my time enjoying the game, but at the same time thinking to myself, you know, I think this would be better if everything was sped up just a bit, if the delays were taken out. And admittedly, on the skill trees of demons, you can eliminate delays by doing things, like end the delay of a special ability by attacking straight afterwards. So there are things you can do to mitigate it, but you shouldn't have to. And the game still feels, it's still got that ponderousness to its combat as you keep playing it and even as you unlock things, even though you can alleviate some of the stuttered nature of the combat. Like I say, it's still fun, still enjoyable, still engrossing enough that I spent most of yesterday playing it, but at times the sluggishness of it feels just a bit too in the way. This is especially felt with the ability that some enemies have, especially bosses, to stun lock you. There have been only one or two, but some instances where I've been stun locked literally to death. If you get caught in the wrong move at the wrong time, it'll just be hit. It's also one of these games, and I've not played one of these in a while, one of those games where you can get hit, knocked down, and as you're slowly taking your time to get back up, the enemy will have another attack ready and just hit you again. I hate it when games do that. I bloody cannot stand a game where you are hit, knocked down, and hit just in time as you get back up again. Oh, I bloody do not like that at all, mate. Oninaki has a gimmick where you switch between the lands of the living and the dead, which really just changes the colour palette and gets you an extra set of enemies to fight. You can go through the map playing it in the world of the living, where you see everything as it should be, the grass is green, the water's wet, and then you can press a button to switch to the land of the dead, where everything's all purple and ethereal looking. The enemies appear to be the same, both in the land of the living and the dead. All that happens is the dead world has its own set of enemies, the living world has its own set of enemies as well, so you clear out a map in the world of the living, then you can switch to the world of the dead, and the map's full of other enemies to destroy, but they're the same enemies as the ones in the world. I would have liked for the enemies in the dead world to be more like ghosts and skeletons and shit, not just the same monsters. As a result of that, it feels more like a gimmick than something integral to the gameplay. Even though it's integral to the story, it doesn't inform the gameplay too much, at least in the many hours, the days worth of hours I've had in it so far. Visually, the game's quite pretty. Again, very much like a Tokyo Factory RPG game from beginning to end. It's not eye-wateringly beautiful, but it's nice. It's got some nice colours to it, albeit fairly muted. Character models are cute, and the soundtrack's quite nice. When music does appear, a lot of it is subtle in the background, just setting a mood, but there's these nice sort of Celtic influences in the music for bosses and stuff like that. And it's quite pretty, quite a pretty soundtrack, but again, not genius levels fantastic, just nice. And that's your Oninaki for you. It's on computers, it's on PS4, it's on the Switch. I got the Switch version, obviously, because it had a Switch version, so I got it. I find JRPG experiences a lot more edifying on the Switch. I've always found them more, I've gotten into them more in a portable fashion, especially because I can get through some of the slower moments, some of the more ponderous sections, some of the grindier elements if I do choose to grind. I find that easier on portable, where I can just, pop on a YouTube video or listen to the wireless, listen to the Smoke and Sugar Lounge on the wireless while I play. And this is a good one for playing Switch handheld, I think. I quite like this game. I like it a lot. I'm probably going to play even more of it, because like I said, playing it yesterday was the day breezed by. Which is weird for a game that's so depressing and makes me think about death all the time. God, I'm thinking about death again now. I'm going to stop. Bye.